Hey there, my name is Przemek, and this is the third part of my top 50 favorite dark deep ambient albums. Today places 40 to 36. But first of all, I would like to thank you once again for watching the previous parts. The first part is already the most watched video on the channel. Part 2 is currently on the 10th place, so you know what to do. I will leave the links to the previous parts in the description. And before I move on to the presentation of another albums from places 40 to 36, first a little curiosity. Do you remember that in the previous episode the album Predominance, Nocturnal Gates of Incidents, was ranked 41st, and while visiting my parents' house on Easter weekend, I accidentally found a cassette recorded by me with this album on side B. On the side A, there's Puissance and their Total Cleansing. In the early 2000s, I was getting some albums from the so-called alternative sources and recorded them onto cassettes, printed tracks listing, and listened to the music that way. Later, of course, I bought the original versions of these albums, but the sentiment for those cassettes remained up until today, I think. Okay, the list. Number 40. Robert Rich and Last Mort Stalker. Released by Fathom Records in 1995. Can we imagine the collaboration of biggest names in dark ambient world? Probably not. And yet both gentlemen, Robert Rich and Brian Williams, hooked up once and created an excellent work, conceptually referring to Roadside Picnic novel by the Strugatsky brothers and the film Stalker by Andrzej Tarkowski. By the way, look what a strange copy of this album I have. When I bought it many years ago, I was happy. Oh, look, there's a booklet. But after taking it out, it turned out that I had a copy with two identical inserts. I wonder if it's a single copy, mine, of which looks like this with the two identical inserts, or is it a larger batch of this CD has two inserts? If you know, let me know in the comment. I think many of you know the book or the movie or both, and you recognize this otherworldly atmosphere of the zone, which is actually the place very much on Earth. Although I must admit that this mood was also perfectly captured in the Stalker video games series, which has, by the way, a terrible interface, but the atmosphere of this game makes a huge impression even today. And you certainly remember Arvo Part's wonderful soundtrack to Tarkovsky's Stalker. What am I saying? The soundtrack is obviously by Edward Artemiev. Soundtrack created using classic modular synthesizers, and many ambient musicians have tried to take on this concept. Some of them even directly referring to Artemiev's soundtrack, or were very strongly inspired by it. And it seems to me that Mr. Williams and Mr. Rich also make direct references to that soundtrack from time to time, because I hear certain modular sounds here that make this album an amalgam of organic and synthetic sounds, which perfectly suits the character of this album. Generally speaking, there are no bass drones here that Lastmore is known for. There's a lot of space and silence here, which brings to mind the deserted well spaces of the zone. And when melody comes in from time to time, it has definitely Rich-esque character. You will listen to a few fragments of Stalker without knowing what album it is or who is behind making it, and you will immediately know that Robert Rich must have had a hand in making it. A wonderful album full of extraordinary mystery. For me, one of the greatest works in the discographies of both musicians. Robert Rich will appear on my list again later. Lastmore, well, no, although the album Purifying Fire was very close. I know it's a collection of tracks from compilations, but I have a lot of warm memories related with Purifying Fire. Anyway, number 40, Lastmore, Robert Rich, Stalker. And now it's time for number 39. Raan, Denacrusty, or should I say Raan? I have no idea how to pronounce it. Anyway, Denacrusty is the only full release by the project. There's some music on his Bandcamp, but the one and only proper album is this one from 2001. Released by Malignant Antibody, which is Malignant Records sublabel. What is the idea behind this sublabel beats me, as all Antibody albums, which were around 10 I think, could easily fit the main label's framework. But okay, it's not important at this moment. Raan is a project by Stigberg, a Swede currently residing in United States, I think. At least he was a couple of years ago. Never mind, let's focus on Denacrusty. According to the words on the project's Bandcamp, thematically, Denacrusty explores an ancient desert culture that was advanced beyond its time and yet long forgotten by history. Your dark, evolving journey into this lost Nakrastan landscape is streaked with the warm hue of sun-bleached rock, sand, gold, and fire. And indeed, this album has a desert feeling. In general, many dark ambient albums from Malignant Records are characterized by such atmosphere. Without looking far, Terra Sancta and Exile, which appeared on the list in 46th place. But just like on Exile, we had only sand, hellish heat, with no signs of civilization in sight. On Denacrusty, the spirit of antiquity is certainly felt. Yes, it is a desert, but you wander through it and see traces of an ancient civilization, once powerful, now but the ruins buried in the sand under the blazing sun. Despite the dense, very intense sound, it is most illustrative music, dark but beautiful, such as the perfect third piece called Sandrine. We'll hear the fragment of this particular track at the end of this segment. I once talked to a friend of mine, a quite known dark ambient artist, and he gave the Nakrasti as an example of the ideal sound that he himself would like to achieve on his albums one day. Because despite being a monolith of a sound, fresh motifs constantly appear somewhere in the background, like atmospheric soundscape on the mentioned Sandrine, the tribal drumming on Circle of Two, some ceremonial oriental trumpets being a kind of distant reminiscent of some kind of ancient celebration, like in Miriam, or the amazing Lilin track, sounding like a triumphant return from some kind of conquest expedition long time ago, somewhere in the Middle East. You walk through these ruins and hear these trumpets and see these images in some kind of phantasmagoric display. You see the rise, the glory, and the decline of once great and powerful, today completely forgotten kingdom. Past and present collide. What an album! It's a real shame that we never got another run full-length record. I mean, yes, Stigberg did some music later as Moth Elected or Electret, and it was quite good, but it was not the same, at least in my book. I sincerely doubt whether Ran will return to the dark ambient scene, but maybe the future will surprise me positively one day. Okay, number 38. Obhoi, hymns to a silent sky. A strange name for this project from Italy. It sounds like some onomatopoeia. Every time I see this name, I imagine a speech bubble from a comic book above some character jumping cheerfully, or a sound from a Nintendo platform game from the 90s. But after typing Obhoi into the translator, it turns out that it means to stop in Hawaiian. Obhoi was a very prolific project which released about 40 full-length albums and as many splits, EPs, etc. There would be certainly more of them if not for the death of the musician Gianluigi Gasparetti in 2013. It was a great loss for the ambient scene. And my favorite Obhoi album, and one of my favorite ambient albums in general, otherwise it wouldn't be included on this list, is Hymns to a Silent Sky from 2005, released by the Czech label Nextera. Also a great contributor to the ambient scene, and also a label that went out of business in 2013 due to the death of the label's boss Christian Kotarac. So a very sad few months in 2013 for ambient fans. But at least both guys, Gianluigi and Christian, left us a great legacy, among others, Hymns to a Silent Sky. An unpretentiously beautiful album with a simple but charming inspiration, which is indicated in the title, of course, Hymns to a Silent Sky. But let me read the motto in the booklet. A silent, impassive sky is watching us, an impending sky full of signals that we should learn to read and perceive, a sky which reflects our moods, hopes and fears, a sky which can recall our deepest memories. I want to dedicate these hymns to all the people who felt attracted by the beauty and the mysteries of the sky. As I said, it's not a particularly sophisticated ambient. It's as simple as looking at the sky is a simple and relaxing pleasure. Lush synths, touching melodies, some field recordings, a lot of silence. Again, there aren't many additional sounds or layers here. Sometimes the tracks are based on one leading motive, sparingly surrounded by other sounds. As I say, a simple album, but not shallow or trivial like new age music, and basically a sound substitute of lying on the grass and staring at the night sky. This is one of my favorite relaxing albums, without darkness, without negative emotions, but with a lot of melancholy and quiet reflection. Such a shame that Gianluigi is no longer with us, but I hope that wherever he is, he now has a lot of time to watch the sky, a completely different sky. Number 36. Obhoj, Hymns to a Silent Sky. And now, I said number 36, of course number 38. And now number 37. Penjaga Insaf, Sama Sadia. The next album, again from Loki Foundation, although if we were to be precise and specific, this one was released by Power and Steel, Loki sublabel, and again a peculiar name for the project. Penjaga Insaf in Malay language means keeper of conscience. Of course, I used a Google Translator again, and it is a German duo by Henry Emig and Ingo Sauerbey. Henry is of course one of the members of Herbst 9. Ingo, as far as I know, was also involved in the creation of one album of that project. And Penjaga Insaf released 2 full albums. Sama Saja is the second one from 2010. I don't know the first one, to whom it may concern. Apart from that, 2 splits with Herbst 9 and Vestigial, and that's all. Not much. Shame, because it's quite a unique project. According to the liner notes in the booklet, the album is based on sounds recorded during Ingo Sauerbey's travels around Indonesia, but these are not typical field recordings, like birds, wind, sea, trees, but recordings of participation in various type of folk, local events and traditional performances like kecak dances and gamelan music shows. Gamelan is a tradition that comes from Indonesia, from the islands of Java and Bali, among others. And while this approach is actually quite special for ambient or dark ambient, it needs to be said that it's not a unique vision of music because, for example, Laurent Nerel has always incorporated the gamelan tradition into his ambient, and his attempts were always very successful. But Samasaja is a thrilling music, sometimes indeed reminiscent of Herbst 9, especially in its synthetic layers and soundscapes, which are kind of foundation for natural Malay sounds and recordings, which are processed in one way or another. It is ambient folk ritual in a quite suggestive way, illustrating a rather mysterious corner of the world. Even though Bali is a mecca for tourists, however, I always wonder what percentage of Bali visitors, instead of lying on the beach and drinking margaritas, try to learn at least a small piece of local customs and explore the culture, even by going to some kind of gamelan performance. On the other hand, do locals care so much about sharing things important to their culture, just so that foreigners can take a few photos and show off to their friends? I don't know, but I know these two Germans, at least to my ears, managed to capture the Malay spirit. Some songs are incredibly tense and dynamic. For example, Jalan, which makes you dance frenetically. Other moments are more lyrical, but overall it is a very coherent album. A great album, which is not like, there's often a case when some project comes up with a sophisticated, thorough and detailed concept, but then it doesn't translate into the sounds. Penjaga Insaf absolutely succeeded in this, and it actually takes you to a completely different part of the world, and believe me, it is worth taking this journey with them. Number 37, Penjaga Insaf, Samasaja. And now time for the last one for this part, number 36, Kurotokage, Call to the Deep. At the beginning of this century, being a Polish fan of post-industrial music, in the broad sense of this word, it was impossible not to come across the Fluttering Dragon label and its releases. Active for like 8 years until 2006, I think. Now the label has been resurrected in 2024 with a few truly massive releases, which will be soon featured on my channel as well. But one of those old albums from Under the Dragon's Wings that made a great impression on me then and now still is Kurotokage, Call to the Deep, released in 2001. Kurotokage, Black Lizard. The name refers to the classic novel by Rampo Edogawa, later turned into a theatrical play by Yukio Mishima, and then adapted to a big screen twice by Kinji Fukusaku, and then I forgot the name of the other director. But our Kuro Tokage is a French project, more precisely a side project by Nicolas from Asmorod, a man always fascinated and inspired by culture of the Far East. Call to the Deep is the only officially available music from the project. No EPs. Just a moment, I have to let the cat out of the room. Sorry. No EPs, no splits or compilation tracks. I remember that when I bought this album around its premiere, I wasn't thrilled at first. Other albums from Fluttering Dragon, the ones from Ildfrost, Puissance, Nordvarg Drak, and many others, immediately grabbed me, my heart and my soul. And this one I felt was kind of average. But with each subsequent listen, each week, month, year, it grew up on me. Somehow this lizard crawled deeper and deeper under my skin, and eventually made its nest there. Probably it will stay there forever. I have a great sentiment for many Fluttering Dragon albums, but today I rarely come back to them, like the ones from the mentioned Puissance. And there are a few that I know by heart, but they still give me the same chills as before, like Call to the Deep, the second album on this list, after Shinkiro, that refers so strongly to Japanese culture. But unlike the spiritual and religious concept of Shinkiro, Kuro Tokage refers more to old tales and legends, Japanese horror stories, and does not shy away from pop culture references like the films. In one of the tracks, if I'm not mistaken, we have a sample from Kwaidan by Masaki Kobayashi. By the way, an absolutely outstanding film and a must-watch for every fan of cinema, not only Asian cinema. I really like this album, even though it's not flawless, especially at the beginning. There are a few weaker fragments. The first song, Vagrant, is a bit boring to me. The second one, EBB, is a bit too different in atmosphere from the others. In a sense, it's very bright. You know, it's like an illustration for a documentary about the everyday life of a rural village somewhere in Japan. Also, one or two tracks appearing later are also only a solid dark ambient, but in the remaining ones, Kuro Tokage rises to a higher level in a way that pulls even those weaker parts to the top. It's dark, it's deep, it's melodic, cinematic, sometimes enriched by a tribal beat. Sure, Call to the Deep sometimes sounds like a stylized vision of how Europeans perceive the Far East, highlighting the most characteristic sounds of this region. But so what if it sounds so fascinating? The last 3 or 4 songs perfectly captured the feeling of Kobayashi's and Kaneto Shindo horror films with all their mystery, picturesque horror, and a kind of specific romanticism. So yes, perhaps there are better, more interesting albums on this list, below Kuro Tokage on the lower positions, but in this case I also think about nostalgia and personal attachment to this album, and this is my personal list after all. Moreover, I also appreciate this album for being a kind of prelude to something that came a few years later, and which I will talk about in one of the next episodes. because this one has come to an end. These were places 40 to 36. Hope you liked it. Click like if you want, comment or subscribe or whatever. Thanks for watching and see you soon.